Hello, this is Jared. I'm playing Oxygen Not Included, and I'm in the Decimal Lens at the moment, and just watching my oxygen system run. I've got electrolyzer, one pump for hydrogen, and two at the bottom there for oxygen, and a simple filter system for that. That's energy efficient. So that's going to provide oxygen to my base here. Now, one of the things I need oxygen for, of course, for dupe survival, but is to get these atmosuits stations filled up. I also need atmosuits over here from the other world. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for delivery of atmosuits from the radioactive ocean asteroid, I'm going to set up this system so that they'll be ready to be filled. And that's going to allow my dupes here to fulfill the main purpose of actually going to this asteroid, which is getting to the oil biome and sending some of that oil to my homeworld, so that I can turn into various different resources in that. Now, I did get a little bit of oil in the last episode. I was able to sort of siphon some off from the oil biome, but now I want to get to the actual oil well and start actually producing oil with water. So I'm just going to specify those stations here to be filled with atmosuits when they arrive. On my homeworld, the temperature management system is just about complete. I'm making these pipes out of aluminum. It's the best material that I get right here for transferring heat. And the idea is I can keep various different things cool. I'm going to have ultimately two liquid thermo aqua tuners. So you can see one on the right, there'll be one on the left. That is going to allow me to cool liquid and deal with heat that comes from that. I also have a poly press so I can generate plastic and not worry about the heat that comes from the polypress. The final one is, you can see, a liquid reservoir that's filled with petroleum that is going to be used to get the liquid that comes from a metal refinery and keep that cool. I say cool, it's going to be quite hot, but it won't progressively get hotter and hotter and hotter. This system here will deal with the help of course, the steam turbines above it. Back in the Decimal Lens, I'm going to actually, instead of treating the polluted water, I want to start saving that, because I want polluted water to be the medium I use to actually do cooling. So I'm going to actually ultimately have a liquid thermo tuner, and that is going to keep polluted water cool. Now, the reason I'm choosing polluted water is because it can go down to -20, whereas regular water, for instance, could only go down to 0 without freezing. So I've got a liquid reservoir that is going to start collecting that polluted water. Just watching the final touches be put on the heat management system over here. Need some power, and I also need that final aqua tuner. I can't build that until I generate a little bit more steel, so hopefully that'll be ready soon enough. And just notice that I've got a vacuum on all sides except for the top. Of course, that's where the steam turbines are. So in the inverted world, I actually had a dupe running out of tasks, so we might as well send them to the home world, because I've got a lot more tasks that need to be completed there than I do over here. Notice that I'm mopping up some petroleum. I have a purpose for this, which you'll see in a little bit. So I've created a vacuum area on the right side of the heat management system. This is going to be my deep freeze. This is the system that's going to essentially flash freeze food, if you will, and allow me to preserve it such that that food will last forever. Underneath it, you notice here, I've got a metal refinery, and I've got the that close to the heat management system, of course, so that I can direct the liquid that goes in and out of it, which is going to be some petroleum, such that that will allow me to keep that, or maybe not keep it cool, but it'll certainly maintain its temperature to be something reasonable for it. So I much prefer that, because I can actually take the heat, and instead of leaking it out into the main asteroid, I can actually convert it into power, which is really cool. And I even have a little bit of automation around the heat management system to actually not enable it to cool off unless it gets way too hot or it's in need of a battery. So it kind of acts as a system to save energy inside that heat management system and release it only when necessary, which is a neat little feature. Though the main purpose of it is just to handle the intense amount of heat that comes from the metal refinery, poly press, and aqua tuners, and all that good stuff. So it's going to allow me to do a lot of industrial work without bleeding heat into my base, which can quickly become a problem if you don't deal with it. So this is my solution: is just having the steam turbines eat up all the heat and have it in a controlled way. The vacuum area really is a centerpiece to it, because it it prevents that or the heat from escaping that zone. So once my dupes finally have this metal refinery, I can start creating more steel. That's the reason I don't have the final aqua tuner. Notice that I just built there a liquid reservoir, and I've got some pipes on. I'm going to have some radiant pipes go through the top area, again aluminum. And the idea is I'm going to actually need to generate some ethanol. I'm going to put it in that liquid reservoir. I'm going to put it through the aqua tuner if it is above minus 50. So the idea is the temperature of that ethanol that's going to be inside there will be minus 50. It's going to go through this cycle over here, cool these blocks. It's going to be granite blocks, by the way. That's a good way to transfer heat between different things. I could use metal tiles as well. Notice on the far right, I'm using aluminum metal tiles for the final thing the food sits on. That way, in the rare case that maybe food gets there and doesn't freeze, it will eventually freeze via the fact that it's sitting on a frozen metal block. So that's the idea that I'm going with. And again, that is ethanol that's going to eventually be going through this whole thing and keeping all these blocks, including those metal blocks and all these granite blocks, cold. And I'm going to have a conveyor rail, which I'll show in a moment, or build in a moment, and that is what is going to transport food through it. So there's actually two blocks. The bottom one is going to store ingredients, and the top metal block, that's for storing food. And the idea is anytime I have some ingredients, I'll throw it through this. It's going to go flash freeze it in the blocks. Going to dump it on top of that really cold block. It'll stay that temperature. Oh, and notice that I've got the petroleum. I put petroleum in those spots before. That's the reason I had mopped up some petroleum. That's allowing me to, or allowing my dupes rather, to actually grab food that's on the left side without actually having to put on their atmosuits and going all the way around to access it. They can actually access it from the normal base. So, and that airflow tile is actually a vacuum on underneath it. So that's the setup I have for flash freezing some of my food. Okay, so just put in the conveyor rail around that zone in the top. That's for ingredients and food. Now I'm putting in the pipes that's going to transport petroleum in and out of the metal refinery. It's going to go through a vacuum area, so it's not going to leak any heat, at least within that spot. Of course, I'll need to power this thing up. And that's going to take that petroleum, and you can actually see it moving through that heat area. Of course, that heat area currently is vacuum, but I'll get some water in there eventually, and that will turn to steam, and that way the steam turbines can keep it cool. The old metal refinery, might as well destroy that one, because I'll no longer be using that. This will be the only one I'll use for generating metal going forward. Just a little bit of automations to help with production. Okay, so I want to make an oil well right there, but I don't want to go in here until I actually have my ammo suits. So I'm just going to do some of the work on the other side of the oil biome, and that's going to have 4 pipes go in and out of it. 1 or 2 of them is for cooling, so polluted water is going to go in and out, acting as a cooling process. 1 is going to be input, that's for water. Water goes into the oil well, and I'll have a pump in there that's going to pump out oil. So 1 input for water, 1 output for oil, and a cooling line. So I might as well just start that process now. Probably by the time this is going to be the water line, second one. The top one and the third one from the top is going to be the cooling polluted water, and the bottom is oil. Notice I made that one out of insulation material because that oil that's going to be coming out of there is hot. Though I'll be aiming to try to keep it cool, but it may still be 40-50 degrees in the end. We'll see where it gets to. Alright, so here is going to be the polluted water line. I need to have 1 or 2 rather, an input and an output to that. And I'll just get my dupes to start this process so that they're not sitting idle, waiting or just waiting for atmo suits before they proceed. They might as well put all this together. Next to the metal refinery, I'm going to create some bins, and I'm going to actually make a system to produce ethanol. The bins, by the way, are going to store things for the input of the metal refineries. So that'd be lime, iron ore, iron, that type of stuff. Maybe even some copper if I want to create more copper. But the ethanol, that's going to be a temporary machine. They'll destroy it once I've got that liquid reservoir over there in the food cooling spot to be about half filled. Doesn't need to be completely filled. So if I get that filled halfway, I'll be quite happy with it. I'm going to create an insulated pipe, and I'm going to connect that from the ethanol distillery and put that to the input of this liquid reservoir to get it filled up halfway or so. I don't expect it'll take too long before I'll need some more steel, so I'm going to get this new setup to generate some steel. And I'll have to make sure that I dump some water in that liquid, or in the heat management system before I go too far with that. This is the automation that essentially I was referring to before. I'm going to have an OR gate here. And the idea is these two steam turbines are allowed to run if either the battery that I'm just going to build here on the right side indicates that power is needed, or if the temperature below is way too hot. So 275 I think is the temperature where things will start to go bad. So something below that 250 might be a good choice. So that's that setup. It is time to start delivering some water inside this system. So I'm actually going to direct the water line to go in here, but I'm going to put a shut off with a manual control for me to turn it off because I don't want too much water to get in there. If you actually completely fill it up, what you'll find is the water that comes out of the steam turbines isn't actually able to get water out of the vent because it's overpressured. So we don't want that to happen. So just waiting for that water to start to go in there and that ethanol to fill up that liquid reservoir halfway. The dupes in the decimal ends is making good work out of all their piping tasks, so I might as well give them a few more tasks to be able to do such that they don't stay idle. I can actually fit more solar panels if I put a solar panel underneath this platform, but I don't want that to be too close to the solar panel, so I'm actually going to destroy it and move that platform up so that when the rocket returns, it'll be higher up and I'll be able to still get some power from this solar panels on this right side. Things are not going to plan. I've got some polluted water in an area or polluted oxygen in a zone that I'm expecting to be a vacuum. Not cool. I'm guessing I've dug out an area there in the bottom. I'm suspecting I've got a piece of polluted dirt that is the culprit. This has happened to me in the past. Yet more pipe works here in the decimal ends. So just connecting up a system to be able to actually take a oil out of here in insulated pipes and make that reach a rocket so that I can send more of it back to the homeworld for processing into plastic. Okay, the liquid reservoir is filled up almost halfway with ethanol. I think that's going to be enough. Notice that I do have a lot more carbon dioxide after having that thing run for so long. I'm after some salt water to put on top of those steam turbines. I've got a little bit there, but it's not going to be enough. The idea is that is going to take on the heat from the steam turbines, and I'm going to put radiant pipes through it and have a cooling system to make sure the steam turbines themselves stay cool, because I don't want their temperature to get 100 degrees or more, or they'll stop operating. Now that a lot of the pipe work is complete in the decimal ends, I might as well start exploring some zones that is safer still for my dupes to go into. So I'm not going to go into oil biome, but this area down here still hasn't been explored. Actually, I might try to avoid that chlorine area and go to the left. Okay, in this rocket that's in the homeworld, it has steel, ceramic, it has 2 liquid reservoirs of water, and atmo suits. So I'm going to get my dupe to board, make sure they take off their suit, and this is now going to be on route to the decimal ends. So bringing some much needed material over there. Going to make sure that when they arrive, they can output, or while they fly rather, they can output their polluted water that's inside the system so that the toilet doesn't get backed up. But before they land, I'm going to actually disable this over here such that I can ensure that the water that comes from it is directed to the correct place. So the one pump I have here trying to maintain a vacuum or create a vacuum once again is just not keeping up. So I'm adding 2 more pumps and hoping this is going to be enough to clear out this. I actually still haven't found the polluted dirt if that is the culprit. So if there is a piece in there, this may just keep happening, so I'm a bit concerned. Okay, so in the Deso lens, now that I've got steel and other material, I can set up a heat management system. This one is just for one liquid thermos tuner. The idea is that's going to keep polluted water cool. And I'm going to have that polluted water go around the base, keeping the overall base cool, in particular the oil well. I'll even have some batteries here for a little bit of sensing. The idea is one battery is going to tell the steam turbine when to run, when power is needed, unless of course that spot is too hot underneath it. And I've got a second battery to tell the liquid thermos tuner when to turn off. Essentially, if we're out of power altogether, that should, or actually maybe halfway out of power, maybe that should turn off until more power is running. The idea is I essentially don't want it to run unless it's daytime when solar panels are collecting power. The other significant resource that I now have in Deso lens, thanks to the homeworld, is ammo suits. Notice that 3 of them have been put in there, so all 3 dupes can actually go inside this oil biome and not be taking damage from the heat that's in there, taking a heat stroke and all that type of thing. And I already have the pipes set up to go to the input, input of this oil biome. So once I get in there, I can extend that. I'm going to have at least 4 tiles high, such that I can get the 4 different tiles or pipelines that I have going in here. So the bottom one, oil, that will actually maybe put it through the insulated spot there. Just creating a little bit of extra insulation just to help prevent an excess amount of heat going into the main base, though I will be putting the polluted water cooling line through, so it shouldn't get extremely hot. Right now it's probably about 75, 80 degrees, but that will start to come down once that aqua tuner starts to run. So that is one of the polluted water lines. I don't know if I've decided at this point which one's going to be input and output, but I just know that they're the top one and third one is the polluted water lines. Figure out direction later on. The only thing, if I don't know the direction, the only thing I can't make is the liquid bridges, but I can do that last minute once I decide. Okay, a little bit of an issue here. It can easily be fixed with one liquid bridge. The idea here is this system is being confused and it thinks that it can go down, but I can actually force the bottom line to only go up. So I've got 2 lines that go into this block, the cold block. It's either going to go through the aqua tuner, that's one option, or it will go bypass it and just be ethanol that is already minus 50 or below, and that will actually not get too cold. Essentially, in either case, that ethanol will be traveling always through the block before it gets back into that. So anyway, with that patched up, let's now move the kitchen to this bottom area. So I'm actually storing the ingredients there, so it makes perfect sense that the kitchen would be at the bottom. And the top, I already have a grate hull. So that is excellent because when the dupes go into that zone, they can just grab some food and they don't have a long way to go to get to tables to eat it. So I'm going to have some light here. I'll even have some automation to put the ingredients that's stored on the left side into this electric grill for the cook to use. Okay, while my dupes are putting the final touches here on the kitchen, so as I mentioned, a little bit of automation to automatically put in that food so that a cook or someone else doesn't have to do that. But while my dupes are doing that, I might as well actually create the conveyor line. That is going to, one of which is a simple one. It's going to take the cooked food into that line over there stored at the top. And the other one is going to be a little bit longer. That's going to be the ingredient line. In that case, this is meat that comes from the pips that are going to be attacked for the time being. Hopefully I'll have so many pips that I'll actually won't even have to do that. I can just automatically get meat into the system. But the really nice thing is the meat that is generated will last forever inside this system. So that is good news. I found the polluted dirt that is causing the problem of not maintaining a vacuum over here. So I'm going to sweep this and bring that into a bin somewhere. They'll be stored somewhere here. I actually will put it down here. I'll even need to, or like to put anyways, a deodorizer next to it because this is polluted dirt making polluted oxygen. And I've noticed another piece. Where did I see that? Somewhere's over here. Well, that one's in water. It's not going to be a problem at the moment, but if I remove that water, it will be. That one, there it is. So I might actually go through the painful process of looking at every single piece of polluted dirt just to make sure that I don't have any that are inside that vacuum area. I believe there's one down there. It is there. So all that needs to be removed so I don't destroy my vacuum. Since I'm storing polluted dirt down there, I might as well build a compost to convert that polluted dirt to regular dirt. I'll have a purpose for dirt going forward once I grow some sleet wheat. Working the compost is a stinky job, so why don't we at least make it a tiny bit more bearable for my dupes by installing a automated light system so that they can actually see when they're doing this stinky job. Okay, it's taken a while for the conveyor line to be built, so whoever has the Metatronics skill as operator and I believe engineer, but their engineer is not on this asteroid, so I'm going to increase their building priority so that if they have the ability to build, they do that first. Okay, in this system here, notice I had to install some drywall, but now that I've got that, I have another cooling system, and I need to fill that with water so that ultimately water can turn to steam, and the steam turbine above can maintain its temperature. I am getting close to having my first oil well, so I'm going to be inputting some water into that. Going to have a polluted water line to keep it cool, because if it gets too hot, it won't be able to operate. And of course, a pump. I'm going to make that pump out of material that it won't overheat. So I've got steel and gold magma, so lots of options there. And that is the pump that's going to transport the oil ultimately into the rocket, so I can send it back home for conversion into plastic. So now that the flash freezing block is about minus 50 degrees, I can test the system, and the conveyor line is built as well. Oh, wartsy, why not? All right, so what I'm going to do is destroy this there. So I want all the meat to go through this, through that flash freezing zone. I'm just going to do my attacking. That is going to create some meat. That conveyor loader will have the meat put into it. So we can see a piece there traveling. That's going to be making its way towards the freezing spot. So that is about sort of room temperature or so. But so 27 degrees, maybe a little bit warmer than that. So as that goes through, already minus 33, minus 30 degrees, it's sitting there. It is frozen. It's not going to go bad. And it's going to be loaded into the electric grill. Cook will go into that zone, into the kitchen. That is going to convert it to barbecue meat, increase the number of calories, and of course the quality of food. It's gotten hot because it's gone through electric grill, but it's going to go through another line here, refreezing, and I've got minus 35 or even below. So that is in a sterile environment. Of course, with vacuum, it'll last forever. So I can actually attack multiple or many critters and get quite a bit of calories and know that that food isn't going to go bad. Okay, so this rocket is going to be filled with oil eventually, and I'll be bringing that back to the homeworld. But I want to unload it with all the materials, the excess ammo suits, the steel, and all the other good stuff that's on it. So I'm going to put a bin there next to it to make sure that's unloaded with the material that I want to stay here, even if the rocket goes back. Even though the rocket that has just landed here in the Desalands brought with it 2 containers of water, I want more water, and that's because I've got an oil well that is hungry for water, but the steam turbine also has to have a lot of water underneath it. Okay, just having a look around here. I'm going to choose a location for oil refinery. So I no longer need this. I've got enough water under the steam turbines. Probably almost too much water, the salt water that's sitting on those steam turbines. They seem to be happy at the moment, so maybe I get lucky there. I'm going to build the oil refinery down here. And I want the oil to go in and the petroleum that goes out of it to go in the vacuum area. So if I can build that as close as I can to the vacuum spot, that is perfect. I'm going to make that 4 tiles high in the vacuum area because I already have 2 lines for petroleum for the purposes of the oil or the metal refinery. So now I've got 2 lines there for that. The oil refinery does have a manual work errand associated with it, along with power requirements. So I'm going to bring lights with the automated sensor there so that the dupe that is using it will have light while they're operating it. That is going to, actually I'm going to do some digging over here, pushing this water out of the way so that I can make sure the pipe, the oil, and the petroleum doesn't go through some tiles that bleed heat into the base by this spot. So I want as much as possible to have those pipes go through vacuum area once it goes out of the oil refinery. Okay, unfortunately I don't have oil on this rocket. I'd love to be sending some oil back to the home world, but I'm in need of water. And the quickest way that I can get some is to send this rocket back to the home world, pick up some water, and head back again. One of the steam turbines decided it all of a sudden wasn't happy with the amount of salt water that was sitting above it, so I'm going to have to pump this out, and I'll pump it back in, or I'll pump some of it back in. I want about 75 kilograms of salt water, not the amount that I have now. Unfortunately, the spot where I'm growing some food is become too hot, so I'm going to relocate here my farm. Otherwise, my dupes are going to run out of food, which I don't want to have happen. So I'm going to start off the polluted water line that is going to initially just keep the batteries and steam turbine cool. Eventually, when this is running, I'll direct that polluted water line to the main base so it can keep the oil well cool as well as the base itself in time. There's an opportunity to make this door open and close a little bit quicker if I make it powered automated doors, so why don't I do that now? Just taking a note of the temperature differential between these two zones. This is why the vacuum is really important to maintain. Down here I've got a new cooling system. This is going to be filled up with brine, and it's actually going to be a line that cools off the base itself, or at least maintains the base temperature to be about 20 or so degrees. Its first job is just going to make sure that the steam turbine, which is above this heat management system, make sure those two are cool. Now, speaking of which, the salt water has been sucked up from that pump, so I can destroy the pump, rebuild the steam turbine, and then I'm going to place salt water back on it. But hopefully this time I won't forget, and I'll be able to turn it off before it gets to be about 75 kilograms or so. Alright, so actually going to build a second reservoir there to store the salt water. So I want to bring brine on the one that's on the bottom. That's going to be used for the base cooling. But I'm also going to direct a little bit of salt water, as I mentioned, on top of those steam turbines. With the oil well placed, I can actually start exploring the rest of the oil biomes. Main thing I'm looking for is lead. I have a lot of purposes for lead. It's refined metal. The only disadvantage is minus 20 to overheat. So as long as I'm going to be using it in spots that are cool, it won't be a problem. Alright, so I'm making a brine line here. Always want to say that. Don't ask. That is going to fill that liquid reservoir I was talking about earlier, and this is ultimately going to be the line that goes all around the base to keep the base itself cool. Though its first job is just to make sure the temperatures of the steam turbines don't get too hot. In this episode, I've created a heat management system that allows me to deal with heat and run quite a bit of industry without leaking that heat into my base. The other thing I set up is a flash freezing system to freeze food, keep it frozen in a sterile environment such that it'll last forever. That applies to both ingredients and food. So things are looking good. Let's see what I get to in the next episode. Like, subscribe, and see you then.